I've started a small series on lost, panicking, and all of that while you're in the Maine woods. I don't know where we're gonna go with it. Don't know how long it's gonna be. I just know I ran out of room on video number 1. So that automatically means that we'll make a small series out of it. And I believe it's an important series because, number one, you got a lot of people out there, a lot of gadgets, lots of everything now. But what happens when the gadgets aren't with you, or what happens when you're all on your own? You know, well, here we go. Good afternoon, my name is Tom. I come to you from the great state of Maine. Welcome to Beaver Creek Outpost. This is part of that series where the twisted come to be lost at Beaver Creek. Kind of what got this series started a couple of weeks ago was I was hunting with my grandson number 2. And he wanted to climb down out of the tree stand and he wanted to hunt from the ground, which was fine. We can learn down there as well. So I took him out and around the back of the cabin here, and we got off the main trail, and then we got just going through the woods. What do we ended up calling that? Made him feel better. Bushwhacking. Once I told him we were bushwhacking, he was fine. But anyways, we're going down through the woods, and it dawned on him that all of a sudden, he didn't know where he was. You know, he'd been following me, kind of taking his own route also, and I'd kind of follow him. And now I knew exactly where we was, because this is my backyard. You know, we went right out back of the cabin here. But anyways, he said, "Papa, we're lost." I said, "No, we're not." He said, "Yes, we are." He said, "You haven't looked at a map once today. You don't even have a map with you." And I said, I told him, I said, and I ain't even got my compass. You know, where I'm hunting, I don't need a compass. I mean, we're hunting right here. Like I said, this is my backyard. This is, well, year number 4 hunting in here. If you haven't figured out where you are in your backyard around your cabin by year 4, you probably need to give it up. But try to convince that 11-year-old that I wasn't lost. I told him exactly where the cabin was. I said, "Well, the cabin's right over there." Well, of course he couldn't see it. I said, "The cabin's right over there." Oh, goodness. Yeah, he said, "You don't have a map." I told him, I said, "Joshua," I said, "Papa's the kind of guy that made the map." It's very odd that I don't, that I ever follow anyone. When I get into the woods and I just start scouting. You know, I got a good idea where I'm at and where I'm headed and all that. But I really just want to really just want to explore. But so that's what I told him. Anyways, we ended up bushwhacking. I took a straight line because I wanted him to know. Papa's not lost. I know exactly where we're at. I took him in a straight line right back to the cabin. As soon as he saw the cabin, and he big smile. I said, "See, Papa knows exactly where he's at." I told him. I said, "Joshua, I said, you got to remember one thing. You're hunting with the East Grand Woodsman." He's a character. Anyways, this video is supposed to be not about that. It's supposed to be about that. I'm lost. I'm lost and don't panic, all that. We've been kind of carrying on. So the last video I ended with summer versus winter. Because one of the biggest things that you're going to need to stay alive if the weather is cold and you are lost, I mean twisted, and it can happen. You could be skiing, you could be rabbit hunting, you could be anything. You could be out for snowshoe, hiking the woods and get yourself twisted. And you'd think, oh, I'll just follow my snowshoe tracks back. Well, when you rabbit hunt, you make so many circles in a day chasing beagles that there's hundreds of snowshoe tracks. They're crossing each other. I mean, wherever that rabbit went is where you went. So just picking up your snowshoe tracks and following them back to the truck, 99% of the time isn't going to work because you've already crossed that set of snowshoe tracks a dozen times that day chasing beagles. So you need to have a little better way of that. Always got a compass. Here, this is even getting away from the fires. Anyways, always got a compass, but not necessarily using it. What I mean by that is that one of the things you learn when you're, especially rabbit hunting, and the same thing when you're out in a boat, one of the things you really learn is a part of your brain that's always keeping track. And I believe each and every one of us has got it. But the part of your brain always keeping track, roughly in the direction we're headed. Like rabbit hunting. We played a place called, it was Coben Gore, a place called Chain of Ponds. And while you were circling with the dogs and the rabbits, you always kind of kept in mind that, hey, the ponds are off to my right, the mountains are off to my left, and a couple other things. And you kind of kept all that in mind. And the snowmobile trail divides the two. You kind of all kept that in mind while you was hunting that day, following the dogs and the rabbits, that you didn't really, you didn't haul out the compass every 5 minutes and take a compass reading because you'd never catch up to the beagles. You kind of figured out where you was as you went, and you kind of figured out more so towards the end of the day. All right, so towards the end of the day, I need to start working my way this way, or getting the dogs up, picking the dogs up, so that I can work my way back towards the snowmobile trail, stuff like that. And you kept track of different things in the woods. And it was information. The more you travel, the more information you have. One of the key factors is just knowing the ground. We knew further up in was a big deer yard because we had been through it. So if you find yourself snowshoeing or chasing dogs up there, okay, I know where the deer yard is. That means the snowmobile trail's over here. Or I know this and I know that. Different things you're putting in your head while you're traveling for the day. So, and that's kind of the way woods travel is. Even getting out and deer hunting, if you're out for a walk and you're following a set of deer tracks, in the back of your mind, you should be keeping track of different things. I recognize that rock. I recognize that tree. You shouldn't just be for a dumb walk through the woods and tunnel vision, one deer track to the next deer track to the next deer track to the next deer track, and at the end of the day say, holy crap, I don't know where I'm at. This is a long ways from where that last video ended. This rabbit hole trail is taking me in a totally different direction. We started this video out wanting to talk about building a fire in the wintertime versus building a fire in the summertime. If you got out there in the wintertime and you're on this rabbit hunt or whatever, and all of a sudden you're twisted, lost, and going to spend the night, you're going to need to know how to build a fire. So how I ended that last video is I like to go for a hike now, and anything that's in the woods, burn it. See what starts the best in the wintertime. See what's available in the wintertime. And one of the things that is available was ash leaves off small ash trees. They're the leaf that sticks around all winter. When you go through the woods, you'll hear it clink, 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 clink. You know, they're dry, they're hard, and they're all over the trees now for whatever reason. And they'll be there most of the winter. They're dry, other than if it snowed or rained, freezing or anything like that. For the most part, they're dry as a bone, and you will come across a good, healthy pile of them. So as far as building a fire, crumple those up, nice and fine for a lot of your equipment, whether it's a ferro rod or if you got flint and steel, same deal there. Just takes a little practice. The sun, the magnifying glass, takes a little practice when I'm using that stuff. If I walk across in the wintertime and I see a white birch tree, number one, never walk by a birch tree without grabbing a handful of bark, period. If you're going by a birch tree, that belongs in your pocket. It doesn't need to be a lot, but it needs to be enough to start a fire. And in my day bag, what we talked about earlier, is I have a small bag that I've made up, and stuff like that ends up in that bag. If I grab myself a handful of those ash leaves, those end up in that bag. If I walk by a birch tree, a good healthy piece of that birch bark ends up in that bag. So that when I get to where I do need a fire, I don't got to look for the basic materials. I've already got them. What I need to look for is my pencil size wood, my lead size twigs, my pencil size twigs, and then getting on to the stuff that's the size of my thumb, getting on to the bigger wood, and bigger wood. That's what I need to look for when I actually get to, all right, I'm going to build a fire. And sometimes we just build a fire to warm up. You know, especially rabbit hunting. You get wet during the day, your gloves get wet. We've already got food with us most of the time. It's that rabbit that you just shot an hour earlier or 20 minutes. So instead of walking an hour or 2 hours back to the pickup back then, we would just find a clearing, build ourselves a nice campfire, skin the rabbit, and cook the rabbit. And once the rabbit was cooked, we'd eat the rabbit. While the rabbit was cooking, we'd be drying out our gloves. So by the time lunch was over, we was warm, our gloves was dry, and our belly was full, and it was time to go back to rabbit hunting. I mean, you can't get much better than that, especially in that area. Cobb Gore is a beautiful, beautiful section in the state of Maine. Chain of ponds, well worth a visit. If you haven't been there, head for Cobb Gore and head for the chain of ponds. Beautiful place to visit. There's also a small campground there. Couldn't tell you the name of it now. Changed hands over the years, but just one of them things that you can go visit. But knowing how to build a fire in the middle of winter is a whole different animal. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 feet of snow. So what you need to do, you either got to dig a hole in 6 feet of snow down to the ground, or, which is a whole lot easier and a whole lot better, cut you down some 6-inch trees, 3-4 of them. They only got to be 3 feet long. Lay that on top of the snowbank. Then cut yourself some smaller ones to lay in the cracks so that all of your coals don't slip through the big wood. And then build your fire right on top of that platform. Lay down the big ones, lay down the little ones, and then build your fire on top of that platform. That platform will last long enough to cook your lunch. It'll last long enough to dry your gloves. It'll last long enough to get you warmed up. And then you can, when it's all said and done, you kick it in, kick some snow over it, and voila. Voila, the fire is out, and you've done everything you needed to do, and you didn't have to bust your hump doing it. Keep that in mind. Try to keep things simple out in the woods so that you don't sweat. The more you sweat, the closer you are to danger when it's wintertime. Big danger too, so keep that in mind. Well, I think we're going to wrap this one up right here. I know we are. We're at the limitation of most people's ability not to press the button and go look for something else to watch. And I'm losing my voice. Time for more coffee. Time to pack up. Time to get ready to go. You guys have a great week, and I will see you next week.